My producers and I like had a phone call right before, like prepping me, one of those like, tell her you'll never hire a light jockey DP, like, we'll be quick, we'll be moving. So I was like, I had, a whole speech about being a first-time director and, how I was going to approach it. And we're chatting and, she said, oh, so this your first movie, second movie? I was like, it's my first movie. And I started to go into like my pitch, and Amanda just goes, you're fine.
Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Matthew Shear is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character?
It's sort of evolved over the years, but generally I like to naturally read the material.
Yes.
Just get a feeling for the script and just, try and encounter it as a screenplay first, or a play, or
in its entirety.
Yeah, not like necessarily as the actor. I've already, when I auditioned for it, skimmed through the whole script to see how many times I show up, to see if it's exciting or not. But yeah, like I am definitely a lover of the screenplay or the play, just reading. So that's kind of the first entry point. And then I really just kind of focus on lines initially. Like I just kind of want to get them as familiar as I can, so that I'm just sort of like not harping on that when I get to set.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm better at that than at other times. That ideally I like to sort of really be kind of very off book, so that I can kind of just show up, and not have to sort of like be perseverating over, did I get the line, right, or did I flub it? And then along with that, I'm pretty into like script analysis. So I really like to know, in a given scene, like what's the main event, and like what's the sort of point of no return, and like just mapping it out as a scene, not for my character, but like the scene itself, just so that I have a sense of what's actually happening, because I feel like I can get a little bit like caught up in what the character's arc is, and sometimes like miss what's happening in the scene.
That's interesting. Do you write that stuff down?
I usually like mark up my script. Like I'll sort of write like C for climax, or inciting incident, II. That's kind of my shorthand, and and then I sort of wonder if I got it right. But it gives me a good way to sort of start to think about the scene. And so if I know my lines and I kind of have a feeling for what's happening in the scene, I think like I can show up and be open.
Yeah. See, that's interesting that there is, and I don't know if it's talked about a lot on here, there really is a difference between the arc your character is taking in a scene and the arc of the scene.
Yeah.
And you can focus on your character and kind of miss what's happening in the scene.
Yes.
But would somebody say to you, okay, but who cares what's happening in the scene? You should just focus on what's happening in your character. Is there any point to that?
I mean, I don't think there's no point in reflecting on what's going on with the character, their history, like what they're there to accomplish. I think those are meaningful, but I think it is, for me, I often kind of I feel like I corrected a tendency I had studying at this place called the Barrow Group. I don't know if you
sure.
Yeah, with Lee Brock and Seth Barrett.
Yeah.
And this is like really something I kind of took from them, which is to just not get in the way, kind of like there's something happening in the scene that is what the playwright, wrote.
Yeah.
And I think I imagine people get to that kind of, expression of the scene in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like I would get in my way sometimes, just getting too heady about like, what's going on with the character, So yeah, that's like a useful.
And it's a good way to not allow yourself to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, so focus on this initially. And it kind of keeps you in line then, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
What brought you to the Barrow Group? Was that the first place that you decided to train?
Pretty much, yeah. As like a adult, had started auditioning and stuff, and like when I began studying there, I really like kind of opened, and it really worked for me.
So that place did work for you.
It worked for me, and it's a very cool place because it's kind of a anti-method in a way. Like it's very practical, and like the script analysis thing is a good example. Like it's really just about finding ways to kind of help you get out of your way.
Yeah. I always wonder if people think when something works for them, do they think, well, this works, but I still wonder what the other schools are like, the other approaches.
Yeah. I kind of like gotten a smattering of tastes of the other approaches just through, studying acting in high school a little bit. And I did this like New York, this thing one summer through New York State called the New York State Summer School for the Arts, which was like a little kind of conservatory thing at Southampton College. And we lived there and, studied Meisner and Stanislavski and like, just sort of like 6 weeks for high school kids. But I got exposed to a lot of that. And so yeah, I sort of had a feeling for it. But this, and I never really pursued any of those, but this one, I don't know, it was less sort of like invasive internally, and that somehow worked for me.
Were you coming out of the Barrow Group then ready to kind of try and engage with a career? So one detail I didn't mention is that when I was at this summer school, New York State Summer School for the Arts, I met an actor teacher there named Joe Twist, who connected me after the summer, connected me with her manager. And so when I was like a junior and senior in high school, I did go on some professional auditions. Yeah. And, it was a strange and kind of unpleasant experience for me. I just didn't totally feel like I was ready to kind of like go head first into this process. And so when I ended up going to college, I was like, I'm gonna kind of let that go. But I got out of college and I'd, done plays and stuff. I was still very, very passionate about acting. And so I just reconnected with this manager when I got out of school, and, I was working all kinds of different jobs, but I would go on auditions. And it was remembering now this manager who said, you should check out the Barrow Group. And so I was kind of like going on auditions, gotten like a few voiceovers and this kind of thing. I don't think I even had I had like a commercial agent.
But yeah, so when I started studying, that's kind of when I had more opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why he kind of sent you there anyway, to kind of like broaden your opportunities thing. Did you find that afterwards then that things started to come in more?
Things started to come in. Yeah. I like did it, it wasn't like overnight, but I found that this training, like it really helped me relax. That was a big part of it. I like felt less sort of in my head. I was kind of trusting, more of my like unconscious behavior. And I think that had impact on like my auditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this was pre-pandemic.
Oh yeah.
And was there added extra anxiety about walking into a room and auditioning? And now, post-pandemic, it being on tape, do you feel better about that?
No, I much prefer in-person auditions. I know this is not Alessandro's preference.
Nivola really came alive because of the self-tape.
Yes, I much prefer being in a room with people. And that, I feel like the most meaningful acting jobs I've gotten and some of the relationships that I've like developed with directors happen because of in-person auditions that I've had. And, I haven't like been totally unsuccessful as on, like doing tapes and stuff, but I do find it to be a much more sort of like kind of foggy journey where like I've just done so many of these tapes and I just don't know what happened.
That's a great descriptor.
Yeah.
Just putting it into the
it's just
air.
Like it's sort of
dissolves away.
Yeah, right. Like there's no, maybe you'll get feedback, but probably not. And it's just sort of like this Kafka-esque, like,
So you'd rather see that disappointment right on somebody's face, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right in the room.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
at least you can walk away and kind of let it go. It's almost like having a long distance relationship.
Yes.
And it's like I'd rather disappoint this person
right
in the bedroom. That's a
that's a good question. Like if truly sort of putting them side by side, like if I, was interrupted in the middle of doing, a series. I was like, thank you, Mr. Shear. I almost would prefer that because it's like the feedback is just real and it's like you can kind of go cry in your, soup and
it's better to deal with that, right? It's better
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I'm sure there are people that are like, okay, I will deal with the ambiguity over never knowing if they like me or not, rather than facing that reality right there.
Yeah.
There are some people like that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And this is one of the things I like about being an actor and what I enjoyed being a director, was like, being with people and kind of feeding off of the vibe and energy of what's happening and having that sort of like loop back into what you're doing.
Yeah.
That process is creative to me, and so like when I'm alone and forcing my wife to do, like another audition with me, we're like getting both closer to divorce and, like it doesn't have that, that dynamic quality.
Yes.
And naturally I'm kidding, but, and she is very good at it. So, but it's just a different, completely different thing. Yeah.
So many partners have to help their acting.
There should be like a support group.
There really should.
Yeah.
Like, no joke. I mean, like, this is, and you know, they want to be supportive, but it's also, they have to deal with you in a vulnerable place that has to do with your career.
Yes. Yes. No,
at the same time.
And I also find, like, with my wife, it's like, you know, it's sort of like children with their parents. It's like they're the worst they can be around their parents. You know, I feel like that with, you know, it's like I am just the most sort of, you know, picky and irritable.
That's what there should be. We should make a call out for people to send the behind the scenes clips of you yelling at your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend. Because that's the vitriol there is unlike anything else probably in your life. Because that the crossroads is what you're saying of the vulnerability of having to do this. In this moment with this person that you could be bad with.
Right. Exactly. And it's also and like that. And what if that person has to be really good at doing it? You know, it's like then this even, you know.
That's interesting.
And it's sort of more convenient and, you know, like, so yes, I would say I prefer it, but I will also add that I do, you know, when I've made a tape that I feel good about, it's satisfying. You know, like it's sort of like a mini kind of film production. You know, like you capture something and you feel good sending it out.
That's right.
You know, there's something to that.
That's right. That's right. It's, you know what? And it actually is a good point because when you could get satisfaction with your work like that, even if it's like once every month, you know, if you do one that you really like, that actually is boosting your confidence as an actor, I think, with yourself. You know, you conquered that. You conquered something.
Yes.
And there's something to that, I think, that is helpful, don't you think?
I do. I think, like, sometimes this is hard to maintain, but when I directed myself in Fantasy Life, like, I do think doing tapes probably had, you know, prepared me for it more than I think it did, or I might think it would. You have to, if you're going to sort of get through it, like develop a opinion about when you are not good and when you are doing it like well. And so that
because you get to look at yourself, you get to watch yourself,
right?
Even if you don't, or not somebody likes to do that, you have to in order to be able to say, okay, send that one in.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
What brought you into Noah Baumbach's sphere?
Really, it was through the casting director, Doug Abel, who is Noah's casting director, and who I met when I was like, you know, I think probably before, like in that early period when I started auditioning, like I was 18 years old or something. I think that's when I, you know, met him and went in for a couple things. Like I went in for The Squid and the Whale. And, you know, when I got out of college and I started auditioning again, and this was sort of well into my having gone to the Barrow Group to study and kind of, you know, going out for more things. I auditioned for, through Doug, through Mistress America. And, you know, I don't think it was like untitled Noah Baumbach, and it was sort of, I don't even know if it was the script from the film. It might have been some other, I don't know. It was like, I don't think it was. And then, you know, did that with Doug and didn't hear for many, many months. And, you know, and then got brought in to read for Noah and Greta. And then, you know, did like a film test, and I was cast.
That's great.
Yeah. So it was really like just an audition. In the room audition experience. Yeah.
The crew was very small on that, wasn't it?
very small. I mean, it was my first, it wasn't my first job, but it was like definitely first couple. So I wasn't like as aware as I would be now of how small it was, but it was like, you know, very minimal lighting, you know, and just a handful of people.
Yeah. Maybe this isn't always true, but for some reason, I think it's true. When there's less crew, it's better for the actors. Yeah. You think that's right?
It definitely, I would say it definitely like takes a certain kind of tension out of like your moment to perform.
Yeah.
But I also think it's like you could have a really uncomfortable small film set that like
is hard,
could freak you out. Yeah. And like a really warm and easygoing, gigantic film set. Yeah. And it would be like, you know, nice.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I think probably in general, you're right. Yeah. Like smaller is
that's what I'm thinking.
Nice. Yeah.
Were you writing all this time, like when you're starting to get work like this, were you a writer?
No, I was really an actor, you know, like I started writing in probably 2018. And it was this screenplay, and it was my first screenplay, and it kind of came out of it sort of came out of acting to a certain degree, because it like was a sort of cry for creative expression in a moment where I was not working much, and it, you know, it definitely connected to a long-standing sort of unexpressed sense that I wanted to write something, and like, but had just never had the courage. So it, just kind of when I finally got kind of going on it, it happened very, you know, very fast. Yeah.
But you said somewhere that you weren't even necessarily writing this role for yourself.
That's true. Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were trying to give yourself a role.
No, it was not the acting like I needed an act. That's a good question, because I think I could be misleading.
You implied that, yes.
No. What I really meant was like, it just came out of that, I'm sure very familiar, you know, to lots of actors, sense that like you can't do what you do, you know, because like if you don't have an acting job, unless you're like going and jumping into class or something like that, which is a great thing to do, you know, like you can't sort of play your cello. That's what I consider, you know, my instrument, a cello.
So this is almost like picking up another instrument just so you could play it. Is that what you mean?
There you go.
Boom.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't play the cello. All right. Well, but this thing I have access to, and I can do it.
Right. And I can do it myself, and nobody, you know, I don't need to show anybody, you know, and I'm just going to do this and see if it can be that thing that I need.
Yes. And as we were talking about before we were recording, and thank God we weren't recording, but anyway, what we were talking about was how all I want is for people to write something that they're going through. And you thankfully wrote this character who was a babysitter, and that's what you were doing to stay alive, right? Who also has a bit of anxiety, or maybe an actual anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
You put that in the character. Was this always the intention? Like, I'm not just going to play this instrument and write creatively, but I'm going to express myself and what's going on and make this personal. And therefore, the second part of that question is, so maybe you were always thinking that you're going to play this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was sort of either withholding the decision to say, oh, this is a role I'd like to play, just because I don't know, sort of like at the time it kind of felt like it was getting away from that impulse of like playing another instrument.
Yeah.
Like it was not coming from the like, oh God, I need a break. Like I gotta get myself a lead. And I kind of wish I had that instinct in me, but for whatever reason, it was more like kind of pure than that. It was like I just needed to play something else and really kind of try and immerse myself in it as much as I would in a acting role.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that like took the lead of the process. At a certain point, I did base the character and a lot of the story elements on aspects of my experience. There was a long stretch where I was, a babysitter while I was auditioning and I'd pause, get a job, and I had a great kind of thing with a few families in New York. And yeah, and then the thread of the like mental health part of that character and the whole story as a whole is just sort of reflective of my experience and, a way in which I wanted to put my own angle on that type of story.
Yeah.
Being, it was somewhat driven by the sense that there aren't a lot of stories about mental health that are sort of like embedded in a kind of normal world, and
true.
sort of like the people who are living with them and not at the, hospital or, about to commit suicide or like that, not that those are unworthy topics, but like something that was really sort of like a part of the texture of the setting.
What kind of people hire a male nanny? Is it people that have really hot husbands and they don't want a young female? And the same flip side of that question, do you, because you're never going to be a nanny again, obviously, after anyone watches this movie, did you have any weird moments with any of the female mothers? Is that part of the true aspect of this?
I'll to answer the first question, I have never thought of that. And the suggestion is that they hired me to fill the place of a young, beautiful woman.
Yes.
Very possible. I don't know. And then the other,
I would, if I was a female, I would never hire a young woman to be my nanny when I'm away.
Sure.
That's insane.
Yes. That is the recipe of a lot of other films.
That's right.
Yeah. But in terms of like my experience with the mothers that I worked with and whether there was any like, chemistry or anything like that, truly that was the most fabricated part of the screenplay. And it at least in my sort of reflections on the title, it does speak to the the fantasy life of what that would be like, like what, and that was sort of ended up being quite interesting to me, not in the sense of like what would that be like in a really sort of one-dimensional kind of like purely sexual or romantic thing, like what would it be like if it really was kind of a complicated and somewhat disjointed but connected thing. And that was a creative turn that I discovered.
And you handled that now knowing that that's complete fantasy, no pun intended. that makes that even more impressive because you handle that aspect with so much delicacy and nuance that it's really impressive. You know what I mean? Like I guess it would be a little less impressive if it's literally based on the actual awkwardness that you were feeling. I mean, it would still be impressive they were able to translate it to film successfully. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the idea that is completely kind of coming out of your mind is impressive. So when you make this movie, when you write this movie, how long did it take you to write this?
So I started in 2018. I'd like finished a draft that I started kind of sharing like right as the pandemic hit. And so I was on a show called The Alienist. And The Alienist shot in Budapest. And so but it was like, we did 2 seasons and there were 2 years between the 2 seasons. And that was sort of this rough period for me where like I'd had this big job and I, kind of, sure this is a common assumption, you're like, I'm off to the races, and just like didn't pan out into much, or certainly not anything that was really as like involved, and so I started writing this, and then one sort of fortunate byproduct of the series, the show getting picked up again was, I was out in Budapest again, and I had a good part, but I was not needed all the time. So I like had all of that time to write. Yeah. And anyway, so like around the pandemic, I had a draft. I think I maybe like had worked on it more actually during the pandemic. Noah Baumbach had time for me, and he read it, and I got
That's cool.
helpful notes from him. Not to say he hasn't had time for me other times, but he,
More time.
like all of us, we're sort of
looking for something to do. Yeah.
And so, so I think like by the time, things were sort of back in swing and, in the world, I finished it and I, ended up connecting with a couple of producers and, then it was the whole other.
And so were they loving it?
The producers?
Yes.
Well, it was, a process, like my acting agents like sent it around, and I wasn't attached initially as the director. I was like, I'd attached myself to be in the part, but I was sort of looking for another director to do it. The directing part of it for me came in around the time I met the first producer who signed on, a guy named Charlie Alderman, who, after we talked about it at length, really encouraged me to think about doing it myself. And that like, writing, directing, acting something is like not only a thing that is, a cool thing to do, but like has some marketability to it. Like at least in terms of like, okay, you've got a writer, director, actor. Everyone sort of can grasp that.
Right. It's true. See, you have something about that. Like, I mean, initially when you were saying that, I was like, wow, that's a brave thing to suggest. Do you know what I mean?
For a producer.
Yeah. But then when you kept talking, I'm like, of course, that does make so much sense. Because there are, like, for instance, like, it worked out for this, so I could say it now. But, like, Samantha Smart was just on the show. Charlie Bird, that's coming out at the end of this week. And that's a writer, actor.
Yep.
She got her friend to direct it, and her friend did a great job, right? It's amazing. It's amazing film and everything. I asked Samantha, why didn't you direct it? And she had good reasons not to, and she trusted her person. That's good. But there is something that's not like, kind of like, we want to be able to kind of like package something or like size it up.
Yeah.
Instantly, this is this person's vision. It's a triple threat item.
Yes, it's sort of like, you know, on that level, it's a story. You know, it's like, oh, he went for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, but it probably was still hard anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's still a hard thing to suggest, even though it makes sense.
And I don't know. I don't think, it's sort of sad to think this, but I don't think I would have had the
guts to do it.
The guts to sort of say that to myself.
To yourself.
You know, like,
you need somebody else to say.
Charlie said it, and it flipped a switch. You know, and then I, you know, became like overconfident. You know, like I was like, I have to direct this.
This person told me.
And in a sort of like way that it was really fun. I just kind of felt this, you know, part of my history and what I've actually been interested all along in as an actor and a, you know, lover of movies and so on. Like, oh, like that is what I want to do. You know, I didn't know.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? It's almost like you didn't give yourself permission to want that.
Well, it's funny, and it is sort of a amazing, like, you know, 1-2 of like, I didn't know that I could play the lead, and then I didn't know I could be the director, you know, like, and the whole journey has sort of been like successive kind of openings like that. Like,
So I heard that a lot of these amazing people in the cast kind of came about from suggestions from Amanda Peet. But how did you get Amanda Peet, who I now cannot imagine there being anybody else in this movie except Amanda Peet? This is Amanda Peet's, this is a magnificent performance from Amanda Peet. How did she get involved?
So I have always been an Amanda Peet fan. I did not think of her as I was writing the part, and I wasn't really thinking of any actors. A friend of mine who had seen a number of versions of the screenplay one day was like, Amanda Peet has to play this part. And I was like, oh my God, like, she's perfect. You know, and it was at first a bit of a like negotiation with the producers. They had their ideas, you know, like, but eventually we all came together and were like, let's go for it. And it was a very lucky circumstance in terms of the offer, because I mean, it was like just sort of ridiculous, like Hollywood, you know, nonsense. Like, this guy Charlie knew an agent at Gersh who used to be the assistant to Amanda's agent, who then retired, who then got the script to her manager's assistant, who slipped it to the manager, and then, you know, they liked it, and they said, "We'll send it."
Wow.
Yeah.
It had to be like shoved on a donkey, sent up the fucking Alps.
Yes. Basically.
Somehow in the barrel of a St. Bernard, it went into fucking Amanda Peet's office.
Right.
All right. Meanwhile, it's like an incredible thing for any actress, that's not an ingenue.
Yes.
Right. So you would think like that this kind of thing that certain actors would have an open thing to this kind of thing, right? In an ideal world.
I think like once her manager read it, he was interested and thought Amanda should read it. Yeah. And we got a response from her very quickly that she thought she was intrigued and, and like that.
Cool.
we should Zoom and meet. Yeah.
And what was that meeting like? It was just you and her?
It was just me and her on a Zoom. It took her about like 20 minutes to get on Zoom. Which is,
I have more respect for her now.
No, and I can say that now, having, grown close to her and, feel okay making fun of her a little bit. But she was like so friendly, straightforward, clear about what she really liked, and also things that she felt needed a little more. And she kind of had some thoughts written down that she like shared with me. And, when she mentioned I have some thoughts, it's naturally I'm thinking, oh God, like what is, first, or like I'm going to do it no matter what. But, I hope she doesn't want to like completely tear this apart. But like every single one was not pushy, intelligent, and like she helped me make the script better.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then she felt better because you were open to that, and that, and you felt better.
And it was sort of and then I would like send her pages, and she, it was like we started kind of collaborating. And the other thing I'll share from that meeting is that, my producers and I like had a phone call right before, like prepping me, one of those like, tell her you'll never hire a light jockey DP, like, we'll be quick, we'll be moving, and so I was like, I had, a whole speech about being a first-time director and, how I was going to approach it. And, and we're chatting and, she said, oh, so this your first movie, second movie? I was like, it's my first movie. And I started to go into like my pitch. Yeah. And Amanda just goes, you're fine.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That must have made you feel good.
I felt like, okay, I might be able to do this.
Yeah. And this is a real one here.
Yeah.
Oh. But were you, though, still concerned, even though you're an actor and you know what good directing does to you, were you still concerned about having to direct an actor, which you had done?
Yes.
And direct somebody that is seasoned, you know what I mean? And also in a role that is, in a way, as big as your role.
Yeah.
In a way.
Oh yeah. Definitely. I think they are equally weighted, more or less. Yes, I was scared of everything. It was truly like jumping off a cliff. Like I did not know anything and I just went forward and, suddenly I was riding in a van to locations and picking locations and, and then it just kind of like, I just kind of got into it and I just sort of found my sense of, like that better than this, and it's just about making choices and, having an instinct or at least that's how I experienced it. And when it came to the actors, I just had no plan. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I just thought, I'm going to approach this. The only thing I can do is try and sort of emulate the directors that have worked for me. Yeah. And try and say things that I find useful in various circumstances. And then also utilize a method of like leaving it alone. Yeah. Sometimes. Amanda in particular was so good at having quick little conferences, taking something and going and doing her thing. She just knew how to utilize whatever my feedback was, quickly and without any kind of like intensity.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So the comedy aspect of this, were you concerned about that? Because there's so many. This is a particular kind of comedy born out of the subtleties of the situation, not a broad comedy.
Right.
So were you, there's so many different ways somebody could take a certain line. Do you think of things like this? Do you go into the set worrying about this, like having a metaphorical tuning fork?
No, I didn't really think like that. I think what was probably just lucky in terms of having the actors that I did was like that all of the sort of lead ensemble and the various other actors I worked with, like there was just a kind of natural ability to express the script in a way that, worked well enough initially or was like better than I could have hoped. And so sometimes it did take a little bit of like, let's bring Bob up a little bit for this moment because it's like just probably will be funnier. Yeah. But in general, I found these actors to sort of have an ability to click in that's
amazing.
Made it, much easier to make small adjustments.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Were you ever finding out that you ran over your head because you're acting and directing and doing
the only time I felt that was in the first couple days, which I guess for practical reasons had to be scheduled in a way where like we were doing like essentially the top of the movie, in the bookstore and the law office basement area.
Yeah.
And like it was just me, so I didn't really, I had a few other actors, but like I was sort of the driving force of all of these scenes. And I wish I had sort of done those.
Started with something else.
Later, only because I kind of, I handled it in maybe a way that you wouldn't expect, which was like, because it's like my first day or the first couple days, and I was relying mostly on just what I knew as an actor. Like I was like, I can probably figure out how to play these scenes. And so that's what I'm going to kind of focus on, and I'm going to do it really fast so that like I can be attentive to everything else. And I just did it all too fast. And when we were in the edit, it all worked out, but like those were scenes that just took an extra amount of focus to sort of like get right, because I just didn't have enough. I didn't have as many takes as I should have. So that was a challenge.
But when you were with other people in scenes, later on, it was fine. It's fine. You weren't thinking like...
No, I really got... One of the things that I got better at quickly was like finding a small quorum of people who could give me notes. Like my script supervisor was great. My cinematographer, Connor Murphy, like, very good at giving acting notes. So I just felt covered, in terms of my performance at a certain point. And so it didn't, like, since I knew that I didn't have to worry about my stuff, I could sort of like take in everyone else.
Yes. Yeah. That's amazing. We must say that once again, Alessandro Nivola gives an incredible performance in this movie. And he's not somebody you knew. You knew him before, but you didn't. I think you met him once before he came on, right?
Yes, once.
And you have provided this guy though with another incredible character. This, and he just is a kind of a wonder to behold, because he's doing stuff that, like, I was telling you before we recorded, he's not showing his work. He's just the character. The character is alive. And so you almost have to stand back for a second to notice how great he's doing. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just laughing and loving this character. And that's the greatest compliment we can give an actor. But I imagine an absolute terror to work with. I'm joking. We love him.
Yeah,
I'm glad you laughed that hard. That means that it wasn't good.
The only challenge with Alessandro was, and it like kind of, I think it helped me rise to, being a director and having direct dialogue with actors who have, a real point of view.
Yeah.
And Alessandro, from a few weeks before he even started, I started getting like text messages from him, little questions about details.
Interesting.
What year did he start playing?
Love this.
Yeah, like
love this.
And just things that I like. I had to sort of come up with to give him something to think about. And, he was just so meticulous about like, he wanted things for the character that like, were very particular choices, like what tattoos the character has and like what hats the character wears. And, just contending with his intensity and passion was real. It ended up just being really fun because he is playful and he's like, just gives it his heart. And, I think like the hats situation ended up being really effective because we both kind of got our way, and that was, just really fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Were there any scenes that you were concerned about as an actor?
The two that I'm thinking of were both difficult because of the material and the actors I was working with, or just the sort of my anxiety about working with someone like Judd Hirsch. In a scene that's just us. And having only done like a small thing with him, or like in the first week, and now I'm like haven't hung out with him or anything, and just going for a scene with Judd Hirsch. So like that was a scheduling difficulty. Like sometimes I would sort of be thrown into a scene that I would have liked to sort of ease myself into in terms of like knowing the actors, both as a director and an actor. So that was hard. And then another kind of funny difficulty that I ran into being the director and the actor was there was a scene with Amanda that like, I storyboarded with my cinematographer, and like when we were setting it up, I sort of forgot that we were just gonna shoot it in basically a 2-shot, and that, that was all we were gonna get. And it just made a lot of sense when we were planning the shot. And I was like, oh, that's gonna be great. The tension, but then it was like, as an actor, I forgot that that's hard, and Amanda, funny. she was like, so you guys are not gonna cover this? So, I was like, I just had to kind of, I just be like, no, sorry, and I'm really glad it,
Is that on the couch? The one on the couch? Oh my God, wow.
I'm glad we didn't do it that way because
Yeah.
it ended up having that quality that was really useful to the scene.
Yes, yes. You don't need it. Sometimes you don't need it. You don't need it. But it's still scary.
Yes.
Even if you realize it later, you don't need it.
Yeah. And it was funny because the cinematographer Connor, I was sort of like, when Amanda was like a little bit like, kind of, are you sure you're I was like, Connor, are we sure? Like, dude, what? And he was like, no, this is how we're going. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's so many actors who've come on that have actually said that they love when there is an adamant decision to do less coverage. Mm-hmm. And it shows a dedication to the style. I mean, and you know what you want.
Yeah.
And, and I think actors ultimately will respect that. Although there is probably a moment when you think this is a first-time director, they don't know that they need coverage here, but it turns out you did. I mean, you prepared.
Right, we planned the shot. Yeah.
It's not like you didn't plan it and then here you are just getting something and then, because we've all seen that. So this must be nice. So when you get done and then you're working with an editor and you're doing it, you had a great editor, right?
Yes, great editor.
And so that process must have been pretty exciting.
It was really fun and painful and satisfying. Yeah.
How long did the distribution deal come after South by Southwest?
It came fairly quickly. I think it was kind of finalized like a few months later, maybe 2 or 3 months.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now this film is opening in New York and other cities on the 27th?
So New York is the 27th at the Angelica.
March 27th.
March 27th. And then in a lot of cities on April 3rd.
April 3rd.
Yeah.
As all good films that are independent this needs everyone to go out and see it in the fucking movie theater, okay?
Yes.
I mean, we need to and it's worth it to go see this movie, okay? You know how picky I am, people. You know how of as much of a snob I am. So I'm a champion of this movie. I want people to go see it. You've done your job on multiple levels, so you should be commended. What is next for you?
I am hoping to direct another feature that I'm writing now.
Excellent.
And yeah, I'm very into this direction.
Cool.
The directing direction. That's sort of my main focus, and also continuing to, be an actor out there. And yeah.
Fantasy life. Seek it out. I don't usually do a spot like this at the end of the show. You know me. I don't do this. So why am I doing that? Maybe it's because it's a great movie. You ever think about that? Maybe that's why.
Wow. I'll take it.
Matthew Shear, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. This was so fun.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe at backtooonepodcast.substack.com, where you can listen to back episodes, engage with other listeners, and support the show.